Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. Trinidad and Tobago is being urged to change its culture of careless driving on the nation's roads. And the Finance Minister says new legislation governing the securities industry to be laid before Parliament. Thank you for joining us. Road accidents are expected to be the fifth leading cause of deaths in the world by the year's 2030. As a result, Trinidad and Tobago is being urged to change its culture of careless driving on the nation's roads. The road fatality figures were announced at the launch of the Ministry of Transport's Safety Public Awareness campaign at the Hyatt Regency, where some 15 cabinet ministers were in attendance.
Some parents so love their children that at 18 they give them a BMW, and at 3 a.m. on the morning he is dead and the car is destroyed. That is love. Unless we begin to have proper parenting at home, at all levels, we will face the problem of having accidents as we are having today.
A wake-up call by National Security Minister the Honourable Jack Warner for parents and drivers on the whole to desist from their recklessness and lawlessness on the nation's roads. This as various government ministries are pledging to make a bold and united effort to work towards cultivating safe driving practices throughout the country. Minister Warner is identifying speed, reckless driving, driving on the shoulder, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs, use of cell phones while driving, and lack of sleep as some of the more popular contributors to road accidents. Also speaking at the event was Local Government Minister Dr. the Honourable Suraj Ramachan, who says a vehicle can be seen as a harmful weapon if used in the wrong way.
A vehicle is a weapon, a deadly weapon, in the hands of a person who does not have the patience, the discipline, and the control over the use of that vehicle.
Revealing some startling statistics on this country's road fatalities over the years was Education Minister Dr. Tim Gopi Singh. The event also highlighted the need for children to be briefed on how to cross the roads. The Education Minister highlighted the importance of incorporating education in road safety practices into the school system.
Over the last 5 years, close to 1,000 deaths due to road traffic accidents. When you look at road traffic accidents in comparison to other leading causes of mortality in the world, in 2008, AIDS was 1.8 million people died from AIDS, and tuberculosis 1.3 million people. And in 2030, road traffic accidents around the world is expected to be the fifth leading cause of death. In Trinidad and Tobago here, we have about 17,000 births annually, 12,000 deaths.
According to police figures for the years 2006 to 2011, on average 200 persons are killed on the nation's roads each year. The number of road fatalities for the year until October 30th was reported to have been 153, 2% more than it was last year. Government deems the road fatality issue untenable and has responded with the creation of the National Road Safety Council. The Ministry of Transport and the other government agencies and ministries, including the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry of National Security, have adopted a multi-sectoral approach to dealing with the increase in road collisions and in a bid to reduce the level of fatalities as a result of such accidents. The Ministry of Communications has also taken up the mandate to educate the public on safe practices on the nation's roads. Veena Bharath, News 4.
In other news, while the corporate secretary's role has changed significantly over recent years, expectations for what it takes to do the job well has also increased. However, calls are being made to companies to lend the needed support for them to execute their function that promotes corporate responsibility, sustainability, and good governance. The comments were made by Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Rudranat Indar Singh, as he introduced the opening address on a workshop reviewing their functions in the business world.
The role corporate secretaries play in the business world are invaluable to a company and its corporate accountability. They are often the one link that connects company owners to boards and management as well as internal and external stakeholders. As a result, they are often left with the task of reconciling complex claims and operate under high expectations. In response to this demand, GovStrat Limited is hosting a workshop, inaugural Caribbean Learning Development and Networking Summit, with the aim of providing corporate training to the many persons charged with leading this role. Speaking at the forum, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Rujanath Indar Singh, says while there are numerous enterprise risks undertaken by these professionals, he is urging companies to provide the needed support they require for the execution of key management procedures.
The requirements for greater accountability and oversight. It is clear why there has been an increased push for corporate secretaries to follow through with robust risk management procedures. The very nature of these dynamic roles and responsibilities of a corporate secretary could present some challenges. It is therefore the board and the management team's responsibility to ensure that the corporate secretary is given sufficient resources and latitude to complete his or her duties.
He says their functions as corporate secretaries have the potential to affect staff, as they are responsible for financial stability and sustainability in a company.
Your role and responsibility has that potential to protect and secure jobs, to protect your financial system, and the whole question of oversight and regulation has come home more appropriately or hit us very hard within recent times when we drill down and we examine, if we examine very closely what occurred at the Hindu Credit Union Cooperative Society Limited and also the CLICO CL financial scenario, which today continues to impact on the financial system of Trinidad and Tobago.
Meanwhile, President and Managing Consultant of GovStrat Limited, Dr. Vindel Kher, says soon his organization will provide global standard accreditation for these professionals here in the region.
This is our first effort in attempting to educate corporate secretaries, because come 2013, hopefully, we will be rolling out the first accreditation program, which is going to be dubbed Professionally Accredited Secretary, PAS.
Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Finance Minister Senator the Honourable Larry Hawai says new legislation governing the securities industry will be laid before the Parliament. The bill will aim to strengthen the regulatory and supervisory capacity of the securities industry.
The Securities Bill 2012 will replace the Securities Industry Act 1995. The bill will seek to protect investors from unfair, improper or fraudulent practices and build confidence in the country's capital markets. The piece of legislation will be drafted in accordance with international best practice as set by the International Organization of Securities Commissions, or IOSCO.
Government is preparing legislation aimed at strengthening the regulatory and supervisory regime in accordance with best international practice as developed by IOSCO. The proposed legislation will be laid in Parliament this week and is intended to replace the existing Securities Industry Act 1995. As the chairman of the SEC has described, the purpose of the Securities Bill 2012 includes strengthening protection for investors from unfair, improper, or fraudulent practices, fostering fair and efficient capital markets, promoting confidence in the securities industry in Trinidad and Tobago, and reducing systemic risk. This bill seeks to address deficiencies in the previous bill relating to regulator access to records of market participants, sharing information with other regulators, record keeping, and confidentiality provisions.
Minister Hawaii says this is a main concern for this government, as non-adherence to international standards could result in Trinidad and Tobago suffering some dire international financial consequences. He indicates that action must be taken to prevent such, and thus new measures addressing terrorist financing, financial disclosure, and regulating the insurance sector and the credit union sector will be dealt with.
On the domestic front, reform of the current regulatory framework for financial supervision is a priority for the government. Legislative and regulatory reforms are envisioned for the insurance sector, the credit union sector, occupational pension plans, the securities industry, and the mutual fund industry. Other priorities pertain to the strengthening of the current institutional, supervisory, and enforcement capacity of our regulatory institutions in the areas of anti-money laundering and combating of terrorist financing, implementation of procedures for the collection of administrative fines and the recovery of supervisory costs by the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, financial disclosure, and the introduction of risk-based capital requirements and an actuarial valuation methodology for insurance companies.
Minister Hawaii says the planned reforms will bring many benefits to Trinidad and Tobago, including increased efficiency on the stock market and encouraging outside investment.
A well-regulated securities market will allow individual investors who lack the wherewithal to start and manage an enterprise, either because of insufficient resources or lack of time, or both, to invest in the stock of a listed enterprise. A well-regulated securities market will facilitate the internationalization of our economy by linking it to the rest of the world in the form of inflow of capital for portfolio investment. Moreover, a strong domestic stock market performance forms a basis for good-performing domestic corporate entities to raise capital in the international and local market. In so doing, the domestic economy opens up to international competitive pressures, thus enhancing efficiency. We also anticipate that a well-regulated domestic securities market will deter capital outflow by providing attractive investment opportunities within our domestic economy.
Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Sport is up right after the break. As Technical Director of Caribbean Football Union Club Champions Caledonia AIA, Jamal Shabazz is one of the most influential figures in regional football. The former national goalkeeper is also presently head coach of the Guyana national senior men's team and interacts on a regular basis with officials from CFU and CONCACAF. Mr. Shabazz recently visited our studios at News 4, and we took the opportunity to get his perspective on the upcoming Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation presidential elections.
Former national women's football coach Jamal Shabazz is clear on what he wants to see coming out of the upcoming Trinidad and Tobago Football Federation presidential elections.
We need a resurgence in Trinidad and Tobago football. We need a renaissance. We've seen a revolution of sort with the exit of Mr. Warner, who has held the reins for 20 years. And it has left not just Trinidad and Tobago football, but Caribbean and CONCACAF football in a bit of a tailspin. Now is a time to move forward. Now is a time to stabilize and move forward. And I think the election called by the TTFF is a step in the right direction in the process of moving forward.
The candidates for the elections are Caribbean Events Manager Colin Murray and Insurance Executive Raymond Timkey. Shabazz had some advice for both men.
I would like to see a whole difference in the approach to governance. I think this is the critical issue. Football in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean does not need another dictatorial approach. It needs someone who has a vision, someone who is strong enough to make the final decision, but someone who understands the importance of consultation, who understands the importance of the opinions of the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, you know, the different elements in football.
The road forward will not be an easy one, according to the Guyana national team coach.
Whoever now comes in the role as the president of the TTFF should understand where we came from. They also have got to have an appreciation of where we are, because there's constant infighting with the Ministry of Sports. The players' issue is still to be settled. You know, a couple things there. So they've got to have an appreciation of where we are. More importantly, they've also got to have a vision of the role they have got to play in taking this thing forward. But it must be a shared vision. It must not be a man and his dog walking down the football road.
On the recent impasse between the TTFF marketing department and the Ministry of Sport,
you've got to understand the Minister of Sport, Anil Roberts, is a gladiator. You know, if you know, this is how I understand him. He's a warrior, and a warrior does fight and fight back, and you know, so on both sides, the federation and on the ministry side, I don't think these issues should be fought in the public domain. I think the time has come for a strong mediator. I think even the Prime Minister or cabinet should come in and say, listen, let's sit down these two sides, because football means a lot to us.
Both parties share a common interest in football, and according to Shabazz, that should be the catalyst for going forward.
I know the Ministry of Sport, their interest is the development of the game, and the TTFF, their interest is the development of the game. But they hold different positions in the approach. So if the new president could get the different sectors, and not just the Ministry of Sport, but corporate Trinidad and Tobago, the secondary school, the different interest groups and stakeholders in football, get them to focus on their interests and not just the position. I think that would be critical.
Wayne Cunningham, News 4 Sports.
News 4 continues after the break. The home of the nation's documentary heritage, the National Archives, provides opportunities for the national community to reflect on our road to nationhood by hosting lectures and exhibitions on various themes. This time, they've placed focus on one community in particular, Belmont.
The event comes under the theme, Opening Our Past, the Belmont Story, and was developed by the Freetown Foundation in collaboration with the Ministry of Diversity and Social Integration. The committee stands in awe of the skills and imagination of the many sporting and cultural icons that emerged from the Belmont community. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration, Jacinta Bailey Sobers, who was born and raised in Belmont, shared her childhood experience on life in that community.
And my experience there was that all the neighbors helped to bring me up, from Miss Marjorie John, sportswoman extraordinaire, who was our neighbor and who my mother would often leave me with as an infant in the little alley next to what we know as Z Road, when she went to work as a policewoman and chef, to those in Durand Street and La Follande, Mr. Kenny and Mr. Kami and all of them who continued the process, and then later on in Gonzales. I attended Melville Memorial like so many children in Belmont, and as a child explored all the tracts and winding valleys of the village. So this event is close to my heart too, Miss Belfour, because it's my hometown, yes?
She says her life as a permanent secretary in the ministry reflects that Belmont can and continues to produce persons who excel in life,
attaining the highest echelons of society. So there is no at-risk community, you know. Yes? all these communities that they call at risk, they have produced and continue to produce citizens of excellence. I want to applaud the Freetown Foundation for their dedication to promoting sensitization on the rich history of Belmont and to activities which promote the continued development of the residents, sensitizing us about the culture, about the history, about the development of this village. I've noted the noble objectives of the organization as spelled out by the President and look forward to the implementation of the planned projects and initiatives of the Foundation.
The committee hopes not to only invoke nostalgia, but more than memories, they hope to highlight the growth of the community, built by free Africans and many others. The exhibition hopes to celebrate the contributions of those who came before us, the visionaries who paved the way for this nation.
When we launched today, I knew the exhibition would go a long way in continuing the promotion of the history and the development of Belmont. Certainly, I have learned that Belmonte, the French version, meant beautiful hills, yes, and that it was the home of the first set of free African slaves, thus the name Freetown Village, yes. Only recently, I also learned that the residence of the estate manager's house of Charles William Warner, who was the Attorney General from 1844 to 1870, is on Urtick Road, and I'm still to find out where that building is. Yes? So probably we have a picture of it in front of there, and it could help me out.
Miss Bailey Sober says there are plans to construct a Belmont Museum, and the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration looks forward to this initiative. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Thank you for joining us.